The industrial saw blade spun at 3,000 RPM, its silver teeth catching the fluorescent lights of the woodshop like a metallic smile. Maya Chen's left hand lay flat against the workbench, 4 fingers extended, pinned down by Tyler Mitchell's iron grip. The smell of sawdust mixed with the acrid scent of fear sweat. 23 students crowded around the workstation, phones raised, recording what they thought would be the most viral video Riverside High had ever produced. Tyler's face glowed with satisfaction as he guided Maya's hand closer to the screaming blade. 1 inch. Half an inch. The metal teeth were so close now that the vibration made her fingertips tingle. In the reflection of the safety guard, Maya could see Tyler's eyes. Cold. Calculating. The same look he'd worn when he'd broken Jeremy's wrist last month. When he'd shaved off half of Sarah's hair in the parking lot. When he'd made Marcus eat dirt until he vomited. But Maya's eyes in that same reflection told a different story. They weren't the eyes of a victim about to lose her fingers. They were the eyes of someone who had been waiting. Someone who had been trained for moments exactly like this. Someone whose father had spent 15 years teaching her that violence was the last resort, but when it came, you showed no mercy. The blade was a 1/4 inch from her skin when Maya smiled. Tyler saw it in the reflection and hesitated for just a fraction of a second. That fraction of a second would change everything. What happened next would be replayed 50 million times across social media. It would end careers. It would topple a family dynasty. It would prove that sometimes the quiet new girl from out of town carries secrets that can level mountains. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. This story begins 3 months ago, on a rain-soaked September morning in Millbrook, Oregon. Population 11,947 people who all knew each other's business, except they didn't know anything about the girl stepping off the Greyhound bus at the depot on Main Street. Maya Chen stood 5 feet 4 inches tall, carried a worn military duffel bag, and had eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of her surroundings with the precision of a surveillance camera. Millbrook was the kind of place where the biggest excitement usually involved high school football games and the annual Timber Festival. The Mitchell family's lumber mill dominated the skyline, its smokestacks visible from anywhere in town. 3 generations of Mitchells had run that mill, employed half the town, and essentially owned the other half. When a Mitchell spoke, people listened. When a Mitchell wanted something, people delivered. When a Mitchell's son went to school, he ruled that school like a feudal lord. Maya didn't know any of this as she walked the 12 blocks from the bus depot to the small rental house on Elm Street. Her father, Colonel David Chen, was deployed overseas for another 8 months. Her mother had passed away when Maya was 14. The Corps had bounced them from base to base for 17 years, but this was the first time Maya would be completely alone. The house was furnished with the basics: bed, kitchen table, couch that had seen better decades. On the coffee table sat a note in her father's careful handwriting. "Baby bird, remember what I taught you. Watch, listen, learn, trust your instincts. The dojo downtown closed last year, but I left you something in the garage. Make me proud. Love, Dad." The garage held her father's greatest gift to her, a complete martial arts setup. Heavy bag, makiwara board, training mats, wooden dummies, and weapons she'd been practicing with since she was 7 years old. But more than the equipment, it represented 15 years of discipline, 15 years of a philosophy that had kept her centered through 17 moves, through losing her mother, through being the eternal new kid. The dojo might be closed, but Maya's training would continue. That first night, as rain drummed against the windows, Maya unpacked her few belongings: photographs of her parents, her collection of martial arts medals hidden in a shoebox, because she'd learned that being good at fighting made some people nervous, and others stupid. Her school records, carefully edited to remove any mention of her black belt certifications or tournament victories. Her father had taught her early that true strength revealed itself only when absolutely necessary. Monday morning arrived with the kind of Pacific Northwest drizzle that could soak you to the bone in minutes. Riverside High School looked like every other American high school Maya had attended. Red brick, too few windows, the lingering smell of industrial disinfectant mixed with teenage hormones. The main difference was the trophy case that dominated the entrance hall. Football championships, wrestling titles, academic awards, and in the center, a shrine to Tyler Mitchell. 4 years of athletic glory, academic achievement, and what the local newspaper called outstanding community leadership. The girl behind the reception desk looked Maya up and down with the kind of practiced assessment that sorted people into categories within seconds. New girl. Military brat. Nobody important. She handed over a schedule and a map with the enthusiasm of someone distributing parking tickets. First period was AP History with Mrs. Patterson, a woman who looked like she'd been teaching since the Civil War. Maya slipped into a seat in the back row. Her standard strategy for observing the social dynamics before committing to any particular position in the hierarchy. She needn't have bothered being subtle. Every head in the room turned when she entered. Whispers followed her to her seat. The door opened 5 minutes after the bell, and Tyler Mitchell entered like he owned not just the classroom but the entire concept of education. 6 feet 2 inches of perfectly sculpted athlete, with the kind of smile that sold cars and won elections. He moved with the confidence of someone who had never been told no, never been denied anything, never faced consequences for his actions. Mrs. Patterson didn't even glance up from her lesson plan. This was clearly Tyler's standard arrival time, and clearly, standard rules didn't apply to him. He scanned the room until his eyes found Maya. For a moment, their gazes locked. In that instant, Maya recognized something her father had taught her to identify: a predator sizing up potential prey. Tyler's smile widened slightly, and Maya felt the first cold finger of warning trace down her spine. Class proceeded normally until Tyler raised his hand during a discussion about westward expansion. Mrs. Patterson called on him with the eager tone of a teacher grateful for student participation. "I was just thinking," Tyler said, his voice carrying easily through the room, "about how the pioneers dealt with outsiders, people who didn't understand the local customs. Sometimes they had to be taught their place." His eyes never left Maya's face. The message was clear. The challenge had been issued. In military families, Maya had learned, you either established your position in the pack order immediately, or you spent months fighting for scraps. But her father had also taught her something else. Never reveal your capabilities until the enemy had committed fully to their attack. Maya smiled politely and took notes about manifest destiny, all while calculating angles, distances, and the structural weak points of the classroom furniture. Tyler Mitchell might rule this particular corner of Oregon, but he'd never faced an opponent trained from childhood in the art of war. The bell rang, and students filed out in the usual chaos of backpacks and conversations. Tyler lingered, timing his exit to coincide with Maya's. As she reached the door, he stepped sideways, blocking her path. "Welcome to Riverside," he said, close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne. "I hope you'll enjoy your time here. It would be a shame if something happened to make you want to leave." Maya looked up at him with the kind of calm expression that came from years of meditation and discipline. When she spoke, her voice was soft but carried clearly. "Thank you for the welcome. I'm sure I'll find my time here very educational." Tyler's smile faltered slightly. That wasn't the response he'd expected. Fear, submission, maybe even defiance, but not this serene confidence. He stepped aside, but Maya could feel his eyes following her down the hallway. The game had begun, and neither player yet understood what the other was truly capable of. Maya's second day at Riverside High began at 5:30 in the morning, not by choice but by habit. Military kids learned early that routines were anchors in a world of constant change. She pulled on running clothes and stepped into the Oregon drizzle that seemed to be the town's permanent weather setting. The streets of Millbrook were empty except for a few delivery trucks heading toward the lumber mill. Her breath formed small clouds as she jogged past houses that looked like they'd been built in the 1950s and never quite updated. The route took her along the riverside that gave the town its name, a modest waterway that carved through forests of Douglas fir and hemlock. Maya had run in bases across the world, from the humid heat of Florida to the thin air of Colorado mountains. But there was something different about this place. Something that felt both peaceful and watchful, like the trees themselves were taking note of the newcomer. Back home, she showered and ate the same breakfast she'd had for 3 years: oatmeal with honey, green tea, and exactly 1 piece of toast. Her father had taught her that consistency in small things built strength for the big challenges. As she dressed for school, Maya caught sight of herself in the mirror. Average height, black hair that she kept in a simple ponytail, clothes that were clean but clearly came from the base exchange, rather than whatever stores the Riverside High social elite frequented. The garage called to her like it did every morning. Maya changed into workout clothes and spent 40 minutes moving through forms that were as natural to her as breathing. Kata was meditation in motion, each technique precise, each transition flowing into the next. The heavy bag absorbed punches that could shatter boards, kicks that could break ribs, but Maya's breathing remained steady throughout. Violence might be the last resort, but when that resort became necessary, she would be ready. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father, sent from whatever classified location the Marines had him stationed. 3 words. Learning anything interesting? Maya smiled and typed back. First day was educational, still assessing the situation. Military families communicated in code even when they didn't need to. School felt different on the second day. The initial curiosity about the new girl had settled into something more calculating. Maya noticed how conversations stopped when she approached groups of students, how eyes followed her movements, how whispers started up again once she'd passed. In military communities, new kids were common enough that integration happened quickly. Here, being an outsider felt like wearing a target. Lunch revealed the true social architecture of Riverside High. The cafeteria was divided into territories as clearly marked as any battle map. Athletes dominated the center tables. Academic achievers claimed the windows. Various social tribes occupied their assigned corners. And in the prime real estate near the food line, Tyler Mitchell held court with his inner circle. Maya had learned long ago to eat quickly and quietly, a habit formed in mess halls where lingering made you a target for pranks or worse. She selected a table near the back wall, positioned where she could observe the room while keeping her back protected. Military paranoia or teenage survival instinct, the result was the same. That's when she first witnessed Tyler's methodology. A freshman boy named Danny was navigating the lunch line when Tyler casually stepped in front of him. Not aggressive enough to draw teacher attention, just a smooth. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Assertion that left Danny standing confused with his tray. When Danny tried to reclaim his place, Tyler turned with that perfect smile. "Hey there, buddy. I think there might be some confusion about how the line works here." Tyler's voice carried just far enough for nearby students to hear. "See, there's kind of a natural order to things. Upperclassmen, especially those who've contributed to the school's reputation, they get certain considerations." Danny, maybe 14 years old and 90 pounds soaking wet, looked around for support that didn't come. Other students studied their phones or found urgent reasons to look elsewhere. Maya watched Tyler's technique with professional interest. The boy was a tactician, she had to give him that. No outright bullying that could be reported, just the gradual erosion of dignity through 1,000 small humiliations. "I understand," Danny mumbled, stepping back. "Great, I knew you were smart." Tyler ruffled the kid's hair like he was petting a dog. "See how easy things are when everyone knows their place?" Maya filed the interaction away in the growing dossier she was building on Tyler Mitchell. Predators always revealed their patterns if you watched long enough. Her father had taught her that understanding an enemy's methodology was the first step toward neutralizing them. The afternoon brought woodshop class, housed in a building that connected to the main school through a covered walkway. The space smelled of sawdust and machine oil, filled with industrial equipment that looked both impressive and dangerous. Mr. Hendricks, the instructor, was a mountain of a man who'd probably been building things since before Maya was born. His introduction to shop safety was thorough and deadly serious. "These tools will cut through wood, metal, and human flesh with equal enthusiasm," he announced to the 22 students in the class. "Respect them, and they'll help you create beautiful things. Disrespect them, and they'll send you to the emergency room faster than you can say lawsuit." Maya noticed that Tyler was in this class too, along with several members of his wrestling team. They clustered around the more impressive equipment like the table saw and bandsaw, making jokes about what they could cut up. Their humor had an edge that made Maya uncomfortable. The class was divided into groups for the semester project, building wooden toolboxes that would test various skills from measuring to joinery. Maya found herself grouped with Emma Rodriguez, a quiet junior who wore clothes that suggested her family shopped at the same store as Maya did, and 2 boys who seemed more interested in their phones than power tools. Emma proved to be surprisingly knowledgeable about woodworking. Her father was a carpenter, she explained, and she'd been helping him since she was old enough to hold a screwdriver safely. As they worked through their design, Maya noticed that Emma's eyes frequently tracked toward Tyler's group, and not with admiration. "He's not as popular as he pretends to be," Emma said quietly during a moment when the shop noise covered their conversation. "What do you mean?" Emma glanced around to make sure they weren't overheard. "Tyler. Half the school is scared of him, not impressed by him. But fear looks a lot like respect from a distance. What are they scared of? Stories, things that happen to people who cross him. Danny, from lunch? Last year he accidentally bumped into Tyler in the hallway. Next day his bike tires were slashed. Week later, someone broke into his locker and destroyed his science project the day before it was due. Nothing you could prove, but the message was clear." Maya absorbed this information while measuring lumber. "What about the teachers? The administration?" Emma's laugh was bitter. "Tyler's dad practically owns this town. His lumber mill employs half our parents. When Tyler was a sophomore, a teacher tried to fail him for cheating on a test. Guess who got transferred to a different district?" The picture was becoming clearer. Tyler Mitchell wasn't just a high school bully. He was a young emperor learning to wield inherited power. The kind of enemy who fought with lawyers and economic pressure rather than fists. At least, that had been his method so far. After school, Maya walked home through neighborhoods that felt increasingly foreign. Military bases had their own ecosystem, but they were essentially the same everywhere. This place had roots that went back generations, relationships, and grudges that predated her birth. She was beginning to understand why her father had warned her to be careful. The house felt too quiet when she entered. No sounds of other families through thin walls, no announcements over PA systems, no familiar rhythms of military life. Just the tick of a clock, and the whisper of rain against windows. Maya made herself a simple dinner and settled at the kitchen table with homework that seemed designed to keep students busy rather than educated. Her phone rang at exactly 1900 hours military time for 7 p.m. Colonel Chen's calls were as punctual as everything else about him. "How was day 2, baby bird?" Maya considered her words carefully. Her father would worry if she sounded troubled, but he'd worry more if she wasn't taking potential threats seriously. Getting a better sense of the social dynamics. There's a local power structure that's more entrenched than I initially assessed. Hostile. Potentially. Still gathering intelligence. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that Maya wondered if the connection had dropped. When her father finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of experience. "Maya, I've been thinking about this assignment. Dropping you into a civilian environment without backup or family support. Maybe we should reconsider. There are military schools, bases, where you could finish your senior year." The offer was tempting. Maya could picture it. Familiar uniforms, understood hierarchies, people who spoke her language. But running away felt like failure, and Colonel Chen hadn't raised a daughter who ran from challenges. "Negative, sir. Mission continues as planned." Her father's chuckle was warm with pride. "Roger that. But remember, baby bird, you're not alone out there. You've got training, instincts, and a father who'll move heaven and earth if you need him. Don't try to handle everything solo." After they hung up, Maya sat in the quiet house and planned her strategy. Tyler Mitchell ruled through intimidation and inherited power. He surrounded himself with followers who enabled his behavior. He targeted the vulnerable and isolated. But Maya wasn't vulnerable, and she wasn't truly isolated. She just needed to be patient, observant, and ready. The garage welcomed her for evening training. Maya worked through more aggressive forms tonight, imagining opponents, practicing combinations that could end fights quickly. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Violence is the last resort, but when that resort becomes necessary, you strike fast, hard, and without hesitation." Outside, rain continued to fall on the quiet streets of Millbrook. Inside, a warrior prepared for a war she hoped wouldn't come, but suspected was inevitable. The third day brought Maya's first real lesson in how power operated at Riverside High. It started during second period chemistry, where she found herself assigned as lab partner to a boy named Marcus Webb. Marcus was one of those students who seemed to inhabit the spaces between social groups, neither popular nor outcast, just existing in the background noise of high school life. He was also, Maya quickly discovered, genuinely brilliant. The key to balancing chemical equations, Marcus explained as they worked through their assignment, is understanding that atoms don't just disappear. Everything has to account for everything else. His hands moved with precision as he measured compounds, and Maya recognized the kind of focused intelligence that military strategists valued. Their experiment was progressing smoothly when Tyler Mitchell and his lab partner Jake Morrison arrived at the station next to theirs. Tyler's approach to chemistry seemed to involve delegating the actual work to Jake while providing commentary loud enough for the entire class to hear. "You know what's funny about chemistry?" Tyler announced, ostensibly to Jake but clearly performing for a wider audience. "It's all about reactions. You introduce the right element into a stable compound, and suddenly everything changes. Sometimes violently." Maya kept her attention on her work, but she could feel Tyler's eyes on her. Marcus had gone very still beside her, the kind of stillness that prey animals adopted when predators drew near. "Take sodium, for example," Tyler continued, his voice carrying that particular tone that suggested multiple meanings. "Perfectly harmless by itself, but drop it in water, and boom, explosive reaction. The sodium doesn't survive intact." Mr. Peterson was grading papers at his desk, either oblivious to the undercurrent in Tyler's monologue or choosing to ignore it. Maya was beginning to understand that willful blindness was a survival strategy for adults in Tyler's sphere of influence. The lesson took a more direct turn when Tyler knocked over a beaker of solution, sending liquid cascading across the lab bench toward Maya and Marcus's carefully organized materials. It appeared accidental, the kind of clumsy mistake that could happen to anyone. But Maya had been watching Tyler's movements, and she'd seen the subtle shift in his elbow, the deliberate extension that sent the beaker tumbling. "Oops," Tyler said with theatrical concern. "Sorry about that. These things happen when you're working with unstable elements." Marcus scrambled to save their notes from the spreading liquid, his face flushed with frustration and something that looked like recognition. This wasn't the first time Tyler had accidentally disrupted his work. Maya moved with practiced efficiency, using paper towels to contain the spill while memorizing every detail of Tyler's expression. "No problem," Maya said evenly. "Accidents happen." Tyler's smile sharpened. He'd expected anger, embarrassment, or submission. Calm acceptance wasn't in his playbook. "That's a mature attitude. I like that in new students. Shows they understand how things work around here." The rest of the period passed without incident, but Maya felt the weight of Tyler's attention like a physical presence. When the bell rang, Marcus lingered as other students filed out. "You handled that well," he said quietly. "Most people either lose their temper or start apologizing. Both reactions just encourage him." "You sound like you've given this some thought." Marcus's laugh was bitter. "I've had plenty of practice. Tyler's been finding ways to mess with me since freshman year. Nothing major enough to report, nothing that couldn't be explained as coincidence or clumsiness. Just a steady campaign of small miseries." Maya was beginning to see the scope of Tyler's operation. This wasn't random bullying, but systematic psychological warfare conducted with the precision of a military campaign. The question was why Marcus had been targeted. What made you interesting to him? "I beat him on a test once. Freshman year biology. We were the only 2 students to get perfect scores, but my answer on the essay question was more detailed. Teacher mentioned it in class." Tyler smiled and congratulated me afterward. Marcus adjusted his glasses with hands that trembled slightly. 2 weeks later, my science fair project got destroyed. Someone broke into the lab after hours and smashed 3 months of work. No evidence, no witnesses, no consequences. The pattern was becoming clear. Tyler didn't just want to dominate, he wanted to educate. Each victim served as both target and example, a lesson for anyone else who might consider challenging the established order. 4th period brought Maya back to woodshop, where she was beginning to appreciate both the creative possibilities and the inherent dangers of the space. Mr. Hendricks had them working on basic joinery techniques, learning to create strong connections between pieces of wood using only traditional methods. Maya found the work meditative, similar to the focus required for martial arts forms. Emma proved to be an excellent teacher, patiently explaining techniques her father had taught her. They worked well together, developing an easy rhythm of cooperation that reminded Maya of training with advanced partners. Emma's knowledge was practical and deep, learned from years of watching a master craftsman work. The dynamic shifted when Tyler's group claimed the table saw for their project. The machine was the crown jewel of the shop, a professional-grade piece of equipment that could cut through lumber like a hot knife through butter. Mr. Hendricks had strict protocols about its use. Only one student at a time, safety glasses mandatory, and constant adult supervision. Tyler, however, seemed to consider these guidelines more like suggestions. While Mr. Hendricks helped another group with their measurements, Tyler fired up the saw and began feeding lumber through it with theatrical confidence. His teammates gathered around like an audience, phones out to capture their leader's mastery of dangerous machinery. "Check this out," Tyler called over the machine's roar. "My dad taught me to use one of these when I was 12. Industrial saws at the mill make this thing look like a toy." Maya watched with professional interest as Tyler demonstrated increasingly risky techniques, holding wood pieces closer to the blade than safety protocols allowed, making cuts without proper measurements. Generally treating the equipment like a prop in his personal show rather than a tool that demanded respect. The accident, when it came, was entirely predictable. Tyler was attempting to make a crosscut on a piece of 2x4, holding it freehand instead of using the safety guides, when the wood caught wrong and kicked back. The lumber shot out of his grip and clattered to the floor. Tyler jerked his hands away from the blade, overcompensating and stumbling backward into Jake Morrison. Jake, caught off guard, crashed into the workbench behind him, sending tools and materials scattering. A chisel fell blade first, embedding itself in the floor inches from Emma's foot. The near miss was close enough that Maya could see the shock in Emma's eyes. Mr. Hendricks appeared instantly, moving faster than Maya would have thought possible for a man his size. He killed the power to the saw and surveyed the scene with the kind of controlled fury that comes from years of dealing with teenage stupidity around dangerous equipment. "Mitchell," his voice was deadly quiet, "what part of safety protocols was unclear to you?" Tyler shifted seamlessly into contrite mode, but Maya caught the flash of annoyance in his eyes before the mask fell into place. "Sorry, Mr. H. I guess I got a little overconfident. My dad always says I'm too eager to jump in and help." "Your eagerness nearly cost Rodriguez her foot." Hendricks gestured to where the chisel still protruded from the wooden floor, "and Morrison could have been seriously hurt." "I know, and I feel terrible about it. Is there anything I can do to make it right?" Maya watched Tyler deploy the full arsenal of his charm offensive, humble expression, sincere voice, body language that suggested genuine remorse. It was a masterful performance, and Maya could see it working on Mr. Hendricks, despite the man's obvious anger. "Everyone in this shop follows the same rules," Hendricks said finally. "No exceptions. You'll spend the rest of the week cleaning equipment instead of working on your project." "Absolutely. Whatever it takes to make sure something like this doesn't happen again." But as the class returned to work and Mr. Hendricks' attention moved elsewhere, Maya saw Tyler's expression when he thought no one was watching. The mask slipped, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. His eyes found Emma, who was still shaken from the near miss, and Tyler's smile returned. Not the charming public version, but something sharper and more personal. After class, Maya walked with Emma toward the main building. The other girl was quieter than usual, lost in thought that seemed to involve looking over her shoulder every few steps. "That wasn't an accident," Emma said suddenly. "What do you mean?" "Tyler with the saw. He's been using that equipment since he was a kid. His family owns half the logging operations in the county. He knows exactly how to handle industrial machinery safely." Emma's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "He wanted something to go wrong. He just didn't care who got hurt in the process." Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Oregon weather. She was dealing with someone who used violence as casually as other people used words. Someone who treated potential injury to innocent bystanders as acceptable collateral damage in whatever game he was playing. That afternoon, walking home through streets that felt increasingly like enemy territory, Maya found herself thinking about chess. Her father had taught her the game as a way to understand strategic thinking, and Tyler reminded her of a particular type of player, the kind who sacrificed pieces not to win, but to send messages. The kind who valued fear more than victory. The house felt even quieter than usual when she arrived. Maya made herself a sandwich and sat at the kitchen table, staring out at the gray Oregon sky while she processed the day's intelligence. Tyler Mitchell wasn't just a high school bully with family connections. He was something more dangerous. A young sociopath learning to wield inherited power with increasing sophistication. The garage called to her earlier than usual. Maya spent 2 hours working through forms that grew progressively more aggressive, her movements sharp and precise, as she channeled growing frustration into disciplined action. Each technique was a solution to a specific type of attack, each combination a response to escalating threats. Violence might be the last resort, but Maya was beginning to suspect that Tyler Mitchell was the kind of opponent who only understood force. The question wasn't whether that moment would come, but when, and whether she would be ready to do what was necessary to protect herself and the people around her. Maya's 4th day at Riverside High began with what appeared to be a simple case of mistaken identity. She arrived at her locker to find it had been decorated overnight with what looked like dozens of sticky notes bearing encouraging messages. At first glance, it seemed like a welcome gesture from friendly classmates. The reality revealed itself as Maya began reading the notes more carefully. "Hope you feel at home here," read one in cheerful pink ink. "Welcome to our little family," declared another in purple marker. But scattered among the seemingly innocent messages were others that carried different meanings entirely. Some families have very specific rules. It's important to know your place in the pecking order. Newcomers should observe before participating. Each hostile message was surrounded by enough genuine-seeming welcomes to provide plausible deniability. Maya methodically removed each note, reading them all before disposing of them in the nearest trash can. She was aware of other students watching her reaction, some with curiosity, others with what looked like sympathy. A few girls from her English class approached as she finished cleaning her locker. "That's so sweet that people welcomed you like that," said Jessica, a blonde cheerleader whose smile seemed genuine enough, though some of those notes looked kinda weird. "Did someone play a prank?" "Just getting acquainted with local customs," Maya replied evenly. She wasn't about to give Tyler ammunition by complaining about what could easily be dismissed as harmless fun. The morning proceeded normally until 3rd period physical education, held in a gymnasium that smelled of rubber mats and teenage determination. Coach Patricia Williams ran the class with military precision that reminded Maya of her father's approach to training. Today's activity was partner-based self-defense, a unit that Coach Williams explained was mandatory due to recent district requirements about personal safety education. Students paired off with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Maya found herself partnered with Sarah Kim, a quiet girl from her mathematics class who approached physical activity with the caution of someone more comfortable with books than bodies. As they practiced basic escape techniques, Maya noticed Tyler being paired with Danny, the freshman who'd been humiliated in the lunch line. Coach Williams demonstrated proper form for breaking free from wrist grabs, emphasizing the importance of technique over strength. Maya and Sarah practiced the movements slowly, Maya being careful to use only enough pressure to demonstrate effectiveness without causing discomfort. Across the gym, Tyler's partnership with Danny was generating different results. "The key is commitment," Tyler announced loudly enough for nearby pairs to hear. "You can't just go through the motions. Real attackers won't be gentle." He gripped Danny's wrist with obvious force, making the smaller boy wince. "See? If someone grabs you like this, you need to react with real intensity." Danny attempted the escape technique, but Tyler's grip tightened instead of releasing. "Try harder," Tyler encouraged. "Pretend this is a real situation. Pretend someone actually wants to hurt you." Maya watched Danny's face grow red with effort and embarrassment as he struggled against Tyler's deliberately excessive hold. Other students had begun to notice, creating a small audience for Tyler's demonstration of superior strength and technique. Coach Williams was on the far side of the gym, helping students who were having trouble with the basic movements. "I can't get free," Danny gasped, his voice carrying a note of genuine distress. "That's because you're not trying hard enough," Tyler replied, his grip shifting to a position that would leave bruises. "In the real world, weakness gets you hurt. Maybe if you spent less time with your computer and more time in the weight room, you'd be able to protect yourself." Maya made a decision that felt both inevitable and dangerous. She approached Tyler's pair during a moment when Coach Williams was distracted by another group's questions. "Mind if I observe your technique?" Maya asked conversationally. "It looks like you have some advanced experience." Tyler's eyes lit up with interest. Here was an opportunity to demonstrate his superiority to the new girl while maintaining his educational facade. "Absolutely. Danny here is struggling with the basics, so I'm giving him some real-world perspective." "That's thoughtful of you," Maya replied. "Could you show me the grip you're using? It seems more sophisticated than what Coach Williams demonstrated." Tyler released Danny's wrist and reached for Maya's, his confidence radiating the kind of arrogance that comes from years of unchallenged dominance. The standard technique is fine for classroom purposes, but actual self-defense requires understanding how attackers really operate. His hand closed around Maya's wrist with the same excessive force he'd used on Danny. Maya felt the familiar sensation of an opponent testing her limits, probing for weakness, establishing dominance through controlled pain. Tyler's grip was strong, but Maya had trained against opponents who could have snapped her bones without effort. More importantly, she understood the psychology behind the demonstration. "Interesting approach," Maya said, her voice remaining calm, despite the increasing pressure. "And the escape technique?" "Well, the textbook method would be to rotate your arm in the direction of my thumb, since that's the weakest point of any grip," Tyler explained, clearly enjoying his role as instructor. "But real attackers compensate for that by adjusting their hold, like this." He shifted his grip to counter the standard escape, trapping Maya's wrist in a position that would have left most students helpless and hurting. Maya felt the bones in her wrist compress under pressure that was definitely beyond the boundaries of classroom exercise. Around them, other students had stopped their own practice to watch Tyler's advanced demonstration. "So the victim would be trapped," Maya observed, still maintaining her conversational tone despite what was becoming genuine assault disguised as education. "Exactly. That's why it's important to understand the realities of physical confrontation, rather than just going through classroom motions." Tyler's smile had acquired that familiar edge, the one that suggested he was enjoying both the physical dominance and the public display of it. Maya waited until Tyler's confidence peaked, until his grip reached maximum pressure, until his attention was focused entirely on demonstrating his superior strength to their growing audience. Then she executed a technique that wasn't covered in any high school self-defense curriculum. Instead of fighting against Tyler's grip, Maya stepped slightly forward and rotated her entire body in a fluid motion that transformed Tyler's advantage into a mechanical disadvantage. Her free hand guided his elbow while her trapped arm became the fulcrum for a leverage system that Tyler hadn't anticipated. Within seconds, Tyler found himself bent forward at an awkward angle, his own grip working against him as Maya's technique redirected his force back into his shoulder joint. "The weakness in that advanced grip," Maya explained in the same conversational tone, "is that it requires the attacker to commit their entire arm structure to maintaining control. Once that commitment is made, the leverage advantage shifts to anyone who understands basic physics." Tyler tried to adjust his position, but Maya's counter technique had locked him into a position where any movement would increase the pressure on his shoulder. Students around them had gone silent, recognizing that they were witnessing something beyond normal classroom exercise. "Let go," Tyler hissed, his public confidence cracking as he realized his demonstration had backfired spectacularly. "Of course," Maya replied, releasing the pressure and stepping back smoothly. "Thank you for the learning opportunity. Your technique was very educational." Tyler straightened, rubbing his shoulder and trying to regain his composure. The audience of students was processing what they'd witnessed. Their seemingly invincible social leader had been neutralized by the quiet new girl using nothing more than superior technique in physics. "That was impressive," Tyler said, his smile returning but carrying a different quality now. "You've obviously had some training." "My father believes in practical education," Maya replied neutrally. Coach Williams chose that moment to blow her whistle, calling the class back to attention for the next set of exercises. As students returned to their partners, Maya caught Danny's expression. The freshman was staring at her with something approaching awe, as if he'd just witnessed a magic trick that defied natural laws. The rest of the period passed normally, but Maya was aware of changed dynamics in the room. Word of her counter-demonstration was spreading through whispered conversations between partners. Students who had barely noticed her before were stealing glances in her direction. Tyler continued his exercises with his usual confidence. But Maya noticed he was being more careful with his partner choices and his application of force. After class, as students filed toward the locker rooms, Tyler fell into step beside Maya. "That was an interesting technique you used," he said, his voice carrying the tone of someone making polite conversation. "Where did you learn something like that?" "Here and there," Maya replied. "Military families move around a lot. You pick up different perspectives on personal safety." "I bet you do." Tyler's smile was friendly, but Maya recognized the calculation behind it. "I'd love to hear more about your background sometime. Maybe we could grab coffee and you could tell me about some of the places you've lived." The invitation sounded casual, even genuine, but Maya understood what was really being offered. Tyler was attempting to gather intelligence while simultaneously demonstrating that her little display hadn't intimidated him. He was also making sure other students witnessed him treating her as a potential romantic interest rather than a threat to his authority. "That's thoughtful of you," Maya replied. "I'm still getting settled. But maybe once I've gotten more familiar with the local environment." Tyler's expression suggested he understood the subtext of her response. She was declining his probe while leaving the door open for future negotiations. It was a diplomatic answer that acknowledged his power without submitting to it. Lunch brought new challenges as Maya discovered that her display in gym class had attracted attention from multiple directions. Emma Rodriguez approached her table with obvious purpose, glancing around to make sure they wouldn't be overheard. "That thing you did in gym class," Emma said quietly. "People are talking about it. Tyler's never been handled like that before." "It was just a classroom exercise," Maya replied, though she knew the deflection was futile. "Right. And I'm just a student who happens to carry a camera everywhere." Emma's smile was knowing. "Look, I'm not trying to cause trouble, but you should know that Tyler doesn't forget things like public demonstrations of weakness. He might seem like he's taking it well, but he's planning something." Maya appreciated the warning, though she'd already reached the same conclusion. Tyler Mitchell was the kind of opponent who viewed every interaction as a test of dominance, and losing face in front of an audience would require a response that re-established his position in the social hierarchy. That afternoon, walking home through increasingly familiar streets, Maya reflected on how quickly the dynamics at Riverside High were shifting. What had started as routine harassment of a new student had evolved into something more complex. Tyler now knew she possessed skills that made her dangerous, but he also knew that backing down would damage his carefully constructed reputation. The question wasn't whether Tyler would escalate his campaign against her, but how and when he would choose to do it. Maya had shown her hand enough to establish that she wasn't an easy target, but not enough to deter someone as committed to dominance as Tyler Mitchell appeared to be. That evening, she called her father during his scheduled communication window. "Situation report, baby bird," Colonel Chen said without preamble. "Local power structure is more entrenched than initially assessed. Primary opposition has begun active testing. I may have revealed capabilities prematurely during a defensive action." The silence on the other end stretched long enough that Maya wondered if the connection had failed. "Define quote capabilities," her father said finally. Maya described the gym class incident, carefully outlining both Tyler's provocation and her response. When she finished, her father was quiet for another long moment. "You did the right thing," he said finally. "Establishing boundaries early can prevent larger conflicts later. But Maya, if this individual is as connected as you've described, he's not going to let a public loss of face go unanswered." "I understand, sir. I'm prepared for escalation." "Good. But remember, baby bird, sometimes the best victory is the one that doesn't look like a fight. Keep your options open." After they hung up, Maya spent an hour in the garage working through scenarios. Tyler Mitchell had revealed himself to be methodical, patient, and willing to use institutional power to achieve his goals. He was also, she was beginning to suspect, the kind of sociopath who viewed other people's pain as entertainment rather than consequence. The next phase of their conflict would determine whether Maya could finish her senior year in peace, or whether Tyler's need for dominance would force a confrontation that only one of them could win. Maya's encounter with the administration marked a turning point that neither she nor Tyler had anticipated. What began as Tyler's attempt to use institutional power to control the narrative had evolved into something far more dangerous when Principal Collins received an unexpected phone call the following morning. Agent Sarah Martinez from the FBI's Portland field office had been monitoring communications related to the Mitchell family's business operations, and Maya's name had appeared in intercepted conversations that suggested a pattern of witness intimidation. The call came during first period, while Maya was sitting through another tedious American literature class, unaware that her conflict with Tyler Mitchell was about to intersect with a federal investigation that had been building for over 2 years. Agent Martinez had been tracking financial irregularities in several Pacific Northwest lumber operations, following money trails that led from environmental crimes to tax evasion to labor law violations. The Mitchell family's business empire had been of particular interest since a whistleblower had come forward with evidence of systematic corruption. Maya learned about the federal interest when she was called to the principal's office for the second time in 2 days. This time, however, Principal Collins was not alone. A woman in a dark suit sat across from Collins's desk, her posture and demeanor suggesting law enforcement training. Tyler Mitchell was nowhere to be seen. "Miss Chen," Principal Collins began, her voice carrying a nervousness that hadn't been present during their previous meeting. "This is Agent Martinez from the FBI. She'd like to ask you some questions about your interactions with Tyler Mitchell." Agent Martinez studied Maya with the kind of professional assessment that Maya recognized from her father's military colleagues. "Ms. Chen, I understand you've had some conflicts with Tyler Mitchell since arriving at Riverside High. I'm hoping you might be willing to share some details about those interactions." Maya's training kicked in immediately. Federal agents didn't investigate high school bullying unless it connected to larger criminal activities. "What kind of details would be helpful, Agent Martinez?" "Anything related to threats, intimidation, use of school resources for personal purposes, or mentions of family business activities. We're particularly interested in any evidence of systematic targeting of students or teachers." Maya realized that her conflict with Tyler had accidentally stumbled into a much larger investigation. The forged administrative note, Tyler's use of school facilities for planned assaults, his family's influence over school personnel, all of these elements suddenly took on greater significance in the context of federal scrutiny. Tyler has demonstrated a pattern of using institutional resources and family connections to intimidate students and faculty, Maya began carefully. He's also made references to his family's influence over local law enforcement and school administration. Agent Martinez took notes while Maya described Tyler's methodology, from the forged administrative communications to the coordinated assault in room 142. As Maya spoke, she watched the agent's expression grow increasingly serious. "Miss Chen, would you be willing to make an official statement about these incidents? Your observations could be valuable to an ongoing investigation into the Mitchell family's business practices." Maya understood the implications. Cooperating with a federal investigation would provide her with powerful protection against Tyler's retaliation, but it would also escalate their conflict beyond anything either of them had imagined. "What kind of protection would be available for students who cooperate with your investigation?" "Comprehensive protection," Agent Martinez replied. "Anyone who assists our investigation receives full federal support, including protection from retaliation and legal assistance if needed." Maya made her decision. "I'll provide whatever assistance you need." The next hour was spent documenting every interaction Maya had experienced with Tyler, from their first encounter in history class to the coordinated assault in room 142. Agent Martinez was particularly interested in Tyler's claims about his family's influence and his casual references to making problems disappear. When the interview concluded, Agent Martinez handed Maya a business card. "Miss Chen, I want you to contact me immediately if Tyler Mitchell or anyone associated with him makes any further threats or attempts at retaliation. This investigation has priority status, and we have resources available to protect witnesses." As Maya left the principal's office, she felt the ground shifting beneath the entire conflict. Tyler Mitchell was no longer just a high school bully with family connections. He was now a person of interest in a federal investigation. The question was how he would respond when he learned that his campaign against Maya had attracted the attention of the FBI. She didn't have to wait long for an answer. Tyler was absent from school for the rest of the week, but his proxies remained active. Maya began noticing surveillance, cars parked too long outside her house, strangers photographing her during her morning runs, phone calls that disconnected when she answered. The harassment had become more sophisticated and more threatening. Emma Rodriguez approached Maya during lunch on Friday with obvious concern. Maya, something's happening. Tyler's been asking people questions about you, about your family, about where you live. He's also been talking to people outside school. Adults I don't recognize. What kind of questions? Personal stuff. Your father's deployment schedule. Whether you have other family in the area. What your daily routines are. It feels like he's gathering intelligence for something big. Maya appreciated the warning, though she'd already detected most of the surveillance activities. Tyler's desperation was making him sloppy, and sloppy enemies made tactical mistakes. That afternoon, Maya received a text message from an unknown number. Family meeting tonight. Your presence is requested. Don't disappoint us. The message was followed by an address Maya didn't recognize, but a quick online search revealed it to be an industrial property owned by Mitchell Lumber Corporation. Tyler was escalating beyond school grounds, moving the conflict into his family's territory where they would have maximum control. Maya immediately called Agent Martinez, who instructed her to avoid the meeting location but to keep her phone active for tracking purposes. We've been monitoring Mitchell family communications, the agent explained. They're planning something that goes beyond typical teenage retaliation. Do not engage with them directly. But Maya had learned from her father that sometimes the best defense was controlled offense. Tyler Mitchell was operating from a position of increasing desperation, making him dangerous but also predictable. If she could force him into a public confrontation where his actions would be witnessed and documented, she might be able to end his campaign permanently. Monday morning brought an escalation that surprised even Maya with its audacity. She arrived at school to find her locker decorated with photographs, images of her house, her morning running route, her father in military uniform, and most disturbing, surveillance photos of her garage training sessions taken through windows. The message was clear. Tyler knew everything about her daily routines, her family situation, and her secret martial arts practice. He was demonstrating both his surveillance capabilities and his willingness to violate her privacy in the most invasive ways possible. Emma Rodriguez appeared beside Maya as she examined the photographs. "This is way beyond normal high school harassment," Emma whispered. "This is stalking, criminal stalking." Maya photographed each image with her phone before removing them from her locker. Tyler's surveillance had been thorough and professional, suggesting he'd hired private investigators or used family business resources to gather intelligence. More importantly, his decision to display the photographs publicly revealed his growing desperation to intimidate her into submission. During first-period history, Mrs. Patterson announced a major project assignment that would require students to work in pairs researching local historical events. Maya found herself assigned to work with Marcus Webb, the brilliant but nervous boy who'd been targeted by Tyler since freshman year. "I'm sorry you got stuck with me," Marcus said quietly as students organized into pairs. "Tyler's probably going to make your life even more difficult if you're associated with me." "Tyler's already making my life difficult," Maya replied. "Might as well work with someone intelligent while he does it." Marcus managed a small smile. "Well, if you're sure, I actually have some interesting ideas about local history that might surprise you." As they discussed potential research topics, Marcus revealed knowledge that extended far beyond typical high school understanding. He'd been investigating local historical events as a personal hobby, uncovering connections between current power structures and historical patterns of corruption and abuse. "The Mitchell family has been controlling this area for 3 generations, Marcus explained, not just through business, but through systematic intimidation of anyone who challenged their authority. There are newspaper archives going back 50 years that document suspicious accidents, unexplained bankruptcies, and people who just disappeared when they became inconvenient." Maya realized that Marcus had been conducting his own investigation into the Mitchell family's history, probably motivated by years of personal harassment from Tyler. His research could provide valuable context for Agent Martinez's federal investigation. "Would you be willing to share that research with federal authorities?" Maya asked. Marcus's eyes widened. "Federal authorities? Maya, what have you gotten yourself involved in?" Maya explained about Agent Martinez and the FBI investigation, watching Marcus's expression shift from surprise to cautious hope. "You mean Tyler might actually face consequences for what he's been doing?" "It's possible, but it would require people like us to come forward with evidence and testimony." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. "I've been keeping records for 3 years," he said finally. "Not just about Tyler, but about the whole system. Teachers who were forced out, students who transferred schools, families who moved away suddenly. I documented everything because I thought someday it might matter." That afternoon, Maya accompanied Marcus to his house, where his bedroom had been converted into a research center that would have impressed professional investigators. 3 computers, file cabinets filled with documented incidents, newspaper clippings organized by date and subject, and a wall covered with connections between various Mitchell family business activities and local power structures. "This is incredible," Maya said, studying the comprehensive timeline Marcus had constructed. "How long have you been working on this?" "Since sophomore year, when I realized Tyler's harassment wasn't random teenage bullying. It was systematic conditioning designed to establish long-term psychological control. I started documenting patterns, and the patterns revealed larger connections." Marcus's research provided a historical context that explained Tyler's current behavior. The Mitchell family had been using similar intimidation tactics for decades, establishing dominance through carefully orchestrated campaigns that isolated targets and created examples for others to fear. "Maya," Marcus said seriously, "if you're really planning to challenge Tyler directly, you need to understand what you're up against. This isn't just about high school social dynamics. The Mitchell family has destroyed people who were much more powerful and well-connected than either of us." Maya studied the documented evidence of the Mitchell family's historical ruthlessness while considering her options. Tyler's escalating surveillance and intimidation suggested he was building toward a final confrontation designed to eliminate her as a threat permanently. The question was whether she could control the timing and circumstances of that confrontation. That evening, Maya called her father during his emergency communication window. "Dad, the situation here has escalated beyond local high school dynamics. There's federal law enforcement involvement and evidence of multi-generational criminal activity." Colonel Chen was quiet for a long moment. "Baby bird, how deep have you gotten yourself into this?" Maya explained about Agent Martinez, Marcus's research, and Tyler's escalating surveillance activities. When she finished, her father was silent long enough that she wondered if the connection had failed. "Maya," he said finally, "what I'm about to tell you is classified, but you need to understand the full scope of what you're dealing with. The Mitchell family has been on federal radar for reasons that go beyond local corruption. There are national security implications related to their business activities." "What kind of national security implications?" "The kind that mean you've accidentally positioned yourself at the center of an investigation that could bring down a criminal organization with connections to organized crime, environmental terrorism, and foreign business interests. The kind that mean Tyler Mitchell isn't just a high school bully. He's a young member of a family that's been committing federal crimes for decades." Maya absorbed this information while watching rain streak down her bedroom window. Her conflict with Tyler had evolved far beyond anything she could have imagined, but it had also provided her with resources and protection she never would have accessed otherwise. "What are my options, Dad?" "You have 2 choices, baby bird. You can withdraw from the situation completely, accept witness protection, and finish your education elsewhere. Or you can see this through to the end, knowing that Tyler Mitchell and his family are going to use every resource they have to eliminate you as a threat." Maya thought about Marcus Webb, documenting abuse for 3 years while hoping someone would eventually care enough to investigate. She thought about Emma Rodriguez, risking her own safety to gather evidence of Tyler's crimes. She thought about all the other students and teachers who had been driven away by the Mitchell family's systematic intimidation. "I'm seeing it through," Maya said. "I knew you would," her father replied with pride and concern in equal measure. "Then listen carefully, because what I'm about to teach you could save your life." For the next hour, Colonel Chen provided Maya with advanced tactical training via telephone, covering surveillance detection, counterintelligence techniques, and combat strategies for dealing with multiple opponents in controlled environments. By the time they finished, Maya understood exactly how dangerous her situation had become and exactly what she would need to do to survive it. The following week brought an apparent calm that Maya recognized as the quiet before a storm. Tyler returned to school but maintained unusual distance, attending classes and interacting normally with his social circle while avoiding any direct contact with Maya. His surveillance activities had become more subtle, and the constant feeling of being watched had decreased. Maya used the apparent respite to coordinate with Agent Martinez and Marcus Webb, building a comprehensive case that documented Tyler's pattern of abuse while connecting it to his family's broader criminal activities. The evidence was becoming overwhelming, but Maya sensed that Tyler was planning something dramatic that would render evidence irrelevant if he succeeded. Emma Rodriguez had continued her own surveillance activities, using her photography skills to document Tyler's meetings with adult associates who clearly weren't high school students. "He's been having regular conversations with men in expensive suits," Emma reported, "people who look like lawyers or business executives, and they've been asking questions about you specifically." The intelligence suggested that Tyler's family was taking Maya's threat seriously enough to involve professional resources in planning their response. The question was what form that response would take and when it would come. Maya's answer arrived on Friday afternoon in the form of another, forged administrative note, this one requesting her presence in the woodshop after school for a, quote, mandatory safety retraining session following recent incidents involving improper equipment usage. The note bore Principal Collins' signature and referenced Maya's previous altercation with Tyler as justification for additional safety training. Maya recognized the setup immediately. Tyler was using the same institutional deception that had worked before, but this time he was choosing a location filled with dangerous equipment that could be used as weapons or instruments of torture. The woodshop's industrial saws, drills, and cutting tools offered Tyler possibilities for intimidation and violence that went far beyond simple physical assault. Emma Rodriguez examined the note with obvious alarm. "Maya, this is a trap. Tyler's planning something horrible, and he's using the woodshop because of all the equipment in there." "I know," Maya replied, "but this time we're going to be ready for him." Maya spent the weekend coordinating with Agent Martinez, who arranged for federal surveillance of the school during the planned confrontation. Marcus Webb provided detailed intelligence about the woodshop's layout and equipment, while Emma Rodriguez positioned herself to document whatever Tyler was planning. Monday afternoon arrived with the kind of gray Pacific Northwest weather that seemed to drain color from the world. Maya approached the woodshop with all her senses heightened, aware that Tyler had chosen this location specifically because of the opportunities it provided for serious violence disguised as accidents. The woodshop appeared empty when Maya arrived, but she could hear the low hum of machinery running in the background. Someone had activated the main power systems, bringing all the industrial equipment online for whatever Tyler had planned. Tyler Mitchell emerged from behind the large table saw, his expression carrying a new quality that Maya found disturbing. Gone was the charismatic mask he usually wore. In its place was something cold and calculating that suggested psychological preparation for serious violence. "Maya," Tyler said with false warmth, "thanks for coming to your safety retraining session. I think you'll find it very educational." Tyler wasn't alone. Jake Morrison and 4 other young men Maya didn't recognize flanked the room's exits. But these weren't high school students. They were adults, probably in their early 20s, with the kind of build and demeanor that suggested professional training in violence. "Advanced safety training apparently requires additional instructors," Maya observed, keeping her voice steady while assessing the tactical situation. "Safety is a serious subject," Tyler replied, "especially when dealing with equipment that can cause permanent injury if misused." Maya noticed that Tyler had positioned himself next to the table saw, its blade spinning at full speed and creating a background noise that would cover screams or calls for help. The setup was sophisticated and deliberate, designed to provide Tyler with maximum psychological advantage, while giving him access to tools that could inflict devastating injuries. "What specific safety procedures are we reviewing today?" Maya asked. Tyler's smile widened, revealing the satisfaction he was deriving from his perceived advantage. "Hand safety, primarily. The proper way to maintain control over your extremities when working with cutting equipment." The threat was explicit now. Tyler was planning to use the industrial saw as an instrument of torture, probably intending to remove Maya's fingers as both punishment and warning to anyone else who might challenge his authority. "Hand safety is certainly important," Maya agreed. "Proper technique prevents accidents." "Exactly," Tyler said, moving closer to the spinning blade. "For instance, understanding how to maintain proper grip pressure when someone is trying to help you learn correct positioning." Jake Morrison and his adult companions began closing the circle around Maya, moving with coordinated precision that suggested military or law enforcement training. Maya realized that Tyler's family had hired professional security personnel to assist with whatever they were planning. Grip pressure can be critical, Maya said, shifting her weight to a more balanced stance while calculating distances and angles. It can be, Tyler agreed. Too little pressure, and you lose control. Too much pressure, and you might find yourself unable to let go when you need to. Tyler reached for Maya's left hand with smooth confidence, clearly intending to demonstrate his point using her fingers and the spinning saw blade. But Maya had been preparing for this moment since their first encounter, and her response was already in motion before Tyler completed his grab. Instead of pulling away from Tyler's grip, Maya stepped toward him, using his own momentum against him while simultaneously executing a wrist control technique that reversed their positions. Within seconds, Tyler found himself bent over the saw table, with Maya controlling his right arm, his hand positioned dangerously close to the spinning blade. Advanced grip techniques can produce unexpected results, Maya said conversationally, maintaining precise control over Tyler's position while keeping her own body safely away from the dangerous equipment. Tyler tried to struggle, but Maya's leverage advantage made resistance impossible without risking serious injury to his own arm. The 5 adult men who had been hired to assist him hesitated, unsure how to intervene without endangering Tyler's safety. The key to proper hand safety, Maya continued, slowly increasing the pressure on Tyler's controlled arm, is understanding that anyone can lose fingers if they don't respect the equipment properly. Tyler's face was flushed with effort and fear as he realized his carefully planned torture session had been turned against him. The spinning saw blade was close enough to his extended fingers that he could feel the vibration through the metal table. "Let me go," Tyler gasped, his usual confidence replaced by genuine terror. "Of course," Maya replied, "just as soon as we complete our safety training demonstration." She looked up at Tyler's hired security personnel who were frozen in tactical confusion. "Gentlemen, you might want to consider whether interfering with a federal investigation is worth whatever Tyler's family is paying you." One of the men spoke for the first time. "What federal investigation?" Maya smiled. "Agent Martinez from the FBI has been monitoring the Mitchell family's business activities for 2 years. This incident is being recorded as evidence of witness intimidation and conspiracy to commit assault with a deadly weapon." The security personnel exchanged glances that suggested they hadn't been fully informed about the legal implications of their employment. Professional criminals understood the importance of avoiding federal charges, and Maya's revelation was forcing them to recalculate their risk assessment. "Tyler," Maya said, maintaining her control over his position near the spinning blade, "I think it's time we had an honest conversation about conflict resolution." Tyler's response was incoherent rage mixed with panic. He'd never been in a situation where his physical safety depended on someone else's restraint, and the psychological impact was overwhelming his ability to think clearly. "This is your opportunity to demonstrate leadership," Maya continued. "Show your employees how mature adults resolve disagreements through negotiation rather than violence." The woodshop door opened, and Agent Martinez entered with 3 other federal agents, their weapons drawn and their presence immediately commanding attention from everyone in the room. "Federal agents," Agent Martinez announced, "everyone step away from the equipment and place your hands where we can see them." Tyler's hired security personnel immediately complied, recognizing federal authority and the futility of resistance. Maya released Tyler's arm and stepped back from the table saw, keeping her hands visible while maintaining awareness of her tactical situation. Tyler stumbled away from the spinning blade, his face pale with shock and humiliation. The carefully planned torture session had not only failed but had been witnessed and documented by federal law enforcement. "Mr. Mitchell," Agent Martinez said, approaching Tyler with handcuffs ready, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit assault with a deadly weapon, witness intimidation, and violation of federal civil rights statutes." As Tyler was read his rights and taken into custody, Maya felt a profound sense of completion. The conflict that had begun with casual harassment had escalated into federal charges that would likely end Tyler's reign of terror permanently. Agent Martinez approached Maya after Tyler had been secured. "Miss Chen, are you injured?" "No injuries," Maya replied, "though I believe Mr. Mitchell may need medical evaluation for psychological trauma." The next several hours were spent providing statements to federal investigators while crime scene technicians documented the woodshop and its equipment. The evidence was overwhelming. Tyler's planned use of industrial machinery for torture, his hiring of security personnel to assist with witness intimidation, and his family's systematic use of violence to maintain control over local institutions. Emma Rodriguez had captured most of the confrontation through the woodshop windows, providing video documentation that would support federal prosecution. Marcus Webb's historical research proved invaluable in establishing patterns of Mitchell family criminal activity that extended back decades. By evening, the FBI had arrested not only Tyler, but also 3 members of his family's business organization and 2 of the security personnel who had assisted with the planned assault. The Mitchell family's lumber operation was shut down pending investigation, and several local officials who had been receiving Mitchell family bribes were also taken into custody. Maya walked home through streets that felt fundamentally different from when she'd first arrived in Millbrook. The Mitchell family's influence had been broken, and the climate of fear they'd maintained for generations was beginning to dissipate. Her phone rang as she reached her house. Colonel Chen's voice carried pride and relief in equal measure. "Mission accomplished, baby bird," he said. "Agent Martinez briefed me on the outcome. You handled yourself like a true warrior." "Thank you, Dad. Though I have to admit, I never expected high school to involve federal investigations and witness protection." "The best training often comes from unexpected sources," her father replied. "You've learned lessons about courage, justice, and strategic thinking that will serve you for the rest of your life." The following weeks brought a transformation to Riverside High School that exceeded Maya's most optimistic expectations. With Tyler Mitchell in federal custody and his family's influence eliminated, students and teachers began speaking openly about years of suppressed incidents and systematic intimidation. Principal Collins was replaced by an administrator who actually investigated reports of harassment rather than covering them up. The school board implemented new policies that protected students and teachers from retaliation by wealthy families or influential community members. Marcus Webb emerged from years of hiding to become a confident and respected student leader, using his research skills to help other victims document their experiences for ongoing legal proceedings. Emma Rodriguez's video documentation skills earned her recognition from journalism programs at several major universities. Maya found herself at the center of a movement that extended far beyond Riverside High School. Her story inspired other students across the Pacific Northwest to come forward with their own experiences of systematic bullying and institutional corruption. But perhaps the most meaningful transformation was personal. Maya discovered that her conflict with Tyler Mitchell had taught her things about leadership, courage, and community that couldn't be learned from textbooks or training manuals. 6 months later, Maya stood in the same woodshop where Tyler had planned to torture her, but now the space served a different purpose. She was teaching self-defense classes to students who wanted to learn not just physical techniques, but also the mental discipline and strategic thinking that could prevent conflicts from escalating to violence. "The goal isn't to become a fighter," Maya explained to her students as they practiced basic defensive movements. "The goal is to become someone who can't be victimized. Someone who stands up for themselves and others. Someone who understands that true strength comes from protecting people who can't protect themselves." Her students included former victims of Tyler's harassment, newcomers who wanted to avoid similar experiences, and even some of Tyler's former followers who were trying to learn better ways of exercising leadership. Emma Rodriguez documented the classes for a college journalism project that would eventually become a national documentary about bullying, institutional corruption, and the power of individual courage to create systemic change. Marcus Webb used his research skills to help the FBI investigate similar patterns of abuse in other communities, becoming a consultant on cases involving the intersection of family wealth and systematic intimidation. As for Tyler Mitchell himself, he pled guilty to multiple federal charges in exchange for testifying against his family's broader criminal organization. The last Maya heard, he was serving a reduced sentence while participating in a psychological treatment program designed to address the trauma and conditioning that had shaped his violent behavior. Maya's final month at Riverside High School was marked by recognition she never would have expected or desired. The school board named her Student Leader of the Year for her role in exposing corruption and protecting vulnerable students. Local law enforcement asked her to speak at training seminars about recognizing and responding to systematic intimidation. But the recognition that meant the most came from Danny, the freshman who had been humiliated by Tyler in the lunch line during Maya's first week. He approached her after one of her self-defense classes with a confidence that would have been impossible months earlier. "Miss Maya," he said formally, "I wanted to thank you for showing us that bullies aren't invincible. I never would have believed it was possible to stand up to someone like Tyler until I saw you do it." "You always had the strength, Danny," Maya replied. You just needed to see that it was possible to use it. As Maya prepared to graduate and move on to college, she reflected on the unexpected education she'd received at Riverside High School. Her conflict with Tyler Mitchell had taught her that violence truly was the last resort, but that when that resort became necessary, decisive action could prevent greater harm to innocent people. More importantly, she'd learned that individual courage could inspire others to find their own strength, creating cascading effects that transformed entire communities. The quiet new girl who had stepped off a Greyhound bus in Millbrook had become a catalyst for changes that would protect future generations of students from the kind of systematic abuse the Mitchell family had perpetuated for decades. On graduation day, Maya stood before her class as valedictorian, looking out at faces that included former victims who had found their voices, former bystanders who had learned to intervene, and former bullies who had chosen to become protectors instead of predators. "We came to high school to prepare for adulthood," Maya said in her speech, "but sometimes adulthood comes to us first, forcing us to make choices that define who we really are. We learned that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to do what's right despite fear. We learned that strength isn't about dominating others. It's about empowering them to find their own power." She paused, looking toward the empty seat where Tyler Mitchell would have sat if his choices had been different. "Most importantly, we learned that change is possible, even when it seems impossible. That individuals can challenge systems, that justice delayed isn't always justice denied, and that sometimes the smallest person in the room carries the biggest heart and the strongest spirit." After graduation, Maya accepted a full scholarship to study international relations and conflict resolution, planning to combine her father's military insights with her own experiences in systematic change management. But she also accepted a part-time position with the FBI's Victim Advocacy Program, helping other young people navigate conflicts with powerful adversaries. Emma Rodriguez was accepted to journalism school with a portfolio built around her documentation of the Mitchell family investigation. Marcus Webb received offers from several universities to study criminology and institutional corruption. Even Danny, the freshman who had been terrorized by Tyler during Maya's first week, had grown into a confident student leader who helped new students integrate safely into Riverside High's transformed social environment. The woodshop where Tyler had planned to torture Maya was converted into a peace studies classroom where students learned conflict resolution, restorative justice, and community building. A plaque by the door read, "In this space, we choose courage over fear, compassion over cruelty, and justice over silence." Maya's final act as a Riverside High student was to establish an ACT scholarship fund for students who had demonstrated courage in challenging systematic injustice. The fund was endowed with money recovered from the Mitchell family's criminal activities, ensuring that their legacy of intimidation would be transformed into support for future leaders. As Maya prepared to leave Millbrook for college, Agent Martinez approached her with a final update on the Mitchell family investigation. "The evidence you helped us gather has led to the dismantling of a criminal organization that had been operating for 3 generations, the agent reported. 17 people have been convicted on federal charges, including tax evasion, environmental crimes, labor law violations, and conspiracy to commit violence. The pattern of systematic intimidation has been broken permanently." "What about Tyler specifically?" Maya asked. "He's responding well to treatment and has been accepted into a restorative justice program that focuses on understanding the impact of his actions on victims. He's requested permission to write you a letter, though you're under no obligation to read it or respond." Maya considered the request carefully. Tyler Mitchell had been both her greatest adversary and her most valuable teacher, showing her capabilities she never knew she possessed while forcing her to confront fundamental questions about justice, mercy, and the possibility of redemption. "I'll read the letter," Maya decided. "Everyone deserves the chance to acknowledge their mistakes and try to make amends." Tyler's letter, when it arrived, was shorter than Maya had expected, but carried an authenticity that his public statements had always lacked. "Maya, I don't expect forgiveness, and I don't deserve it, but I wanted you to know that your courage in standing up to me probably saved my life as well as the lives of my future victims. The path I was on would have led to prison or worse, and probably would have hurt many more innocent people. The therapy I'm receiving has helped me understand that the strength you demonstrated isn't about physical fighting. It's about choosing to protect others even when it's dangerous or difficult. I hope someday I can learn to use whatever strength I have in the same way. I'm sorry for the pain I caused you and everyone else I hurt. Tyler." Maya read the letter twice, then filed it away with other documents from her time at Riverside High School. Tyler's acknowledgement of responsibility was a form of closure, but more importantly, it was evidence that even the most damaged people could choose to change if they were given appropriate consequences and support. 5 years later, Maya returned to Millbrook as a graduate. Everything had changed, now carried a new inscription above its entrance. True strength protects the vulnerable. True courage challenges injustice. True victory transforms enemies into allies. These words guided every student who entered, ensuring that Maya's lessons would continue protecting future generations long after she had moved on to new challenges. As Maya continued her journey, she carried with her the knowledge that sometimes the most important education happened not in classrooms but in moments of crisis, that revealed what people were really capable of when they chose courage over fear, justice over silence, and protection over domination. The quiet new girl had become a force for transformation, proving that warriors came in all sizes, and that the smallest person could cast the longest shadow when they stood up for what was right. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.